But folks, this Bob, today we have to talk about the Indian elections, because they're going to have the outcome of those elections is definitely going to have impact on global policies, foreign policies, financial policies, and so on and so forth. But first off the top, cousin of mine commented on the bright color of my shirts. Well, I hope he likes this one too. Now, I'm going to start this conversation, which I had about an article I read many months ago, and I mentioned this on my video broadcast. Was what Ruchir Sharma, that capital is going to decide this year's key elections, and it's the global capital is going to punish any party or government that doesn't adhere to macroeconomic rules and regulations. And basically the pointing out was to India, obviously here the existing government is obviously known to be very pro-capital. Then also it referred to probably to Sunak and maybe the Labour Party that might come to power there. And probably the United States, I think they may be all cheering for Trump and lesser control over Wall Street, right? And this kind of article leads me to a very interesting conversation I had with the old two college friends of mine, very old college friends of mine, right? Here we are sitting in this stony upstate club, the golf club, him and me, these three of us, and well, obviously a very privileged club, right? Only very few people can't afford it in terms of money, but in terms of the level of society, only very few people get invited in. And the conversation obviously goes around to who I am going to vote for, and I said, well, I'm going to vote for whoever I want to vote for. He probably knows my line of thought. And his next question was, what's the option? Well, for that, I kept quiet. And then what rolled out was generally how good this particular government has been for the economy and so on and so forth, and we're talking about fintech and how he's amazed at how the growth of fintech in India and how they're rapidly growing, and it all eventually boiled down. The other guy, being an industrialist, was more concerned about his bottom line. A traditional industrialist was more concerned about his bottom line, while the Wall Street guy was just interested in the top line. And then was talking about, so he's obviously picking up all these figures of how well India is doing from various Moody's, Standards and Poor, World Bank, IMF, and so on and so forth. But when you're looking at these figures, obviously, which are not their research, this is something that's put out there by the government of India. You got to remember, let's talk about Moody's and S&P. You can remember how rating systems took them down like Iceland, right? So you can't really trust them, right? Then you see how the top line has led to revisionism. We were doing our MBAs almost around the same time, where real growth mattered, nominal doesn't. Now in his vocabulary, nominal is more important or as important. Level of debts of a country mattered. Now for him that doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, if the country is growing, this can be taken care of, right? But here is something I'd like to say, right, about these Wall Street guys. So when anybody's talking like this, I'm not going to say they're brain XYZ, because they're very intelligent people, right? But they are the Wall Street type. And I've heard this many times over, right, about how well the economy is doing, right? None of them are concerned about the unemployment. Though I must say this, he is concerned about the unemployment, and he's concerned about this, growth without employment. He's also concerned about the disparity that has happened in the society. He is concerned about all that, right? But his still focus it still continues to be top line, and bottom line is actually the people of this country. Essentially, if you look at it in a broader sense, right? What matters to them, he doesn't think that unemployment matters to them, because this guy is a shoo-in. But despite the unemployment, despite the inflation, he's a shoo-in. But he still has a very conflicting statement which says they're much better off 30 years ago, but they're still unhappy. Why are they unhappy? The other fellow jumps in and says how things have gotten better because 1,000 rupees has been put into their XYZ's account every month in Uttarakhand. Not only that, the health facilities, this Ayushman card is really working well. But let me tell you something about the Ayushman card. It doesn't work in 90% of the places, right? But look at what they're saying, right? What they're saying is, why aren't these guys happy? Let me tell you why these guys are not happy. They are not happy because you've taken the aspiration of a better life away from them. All they're doing is running from pillar to post to meet their debt. And that's where fintech, which has caught the global eyes, is also a problematic area. Because this fintech has ended up being small loans given to people who can't afford them. And then you have hard-arm tactics where a lot of people's stories of suicides have been committed, where recovery is impossible. And when he says debt doesn't matter, we were both studying in the United States when the debt crisis of Latin America hit the world, right? What was it all about? It was a lot of money in the United States finding places where they convinced the people taking it that, oh, they need it, right? Similarly, some stuff I've read that happened in the United States has just created something called the zombie companies. These companies make no profit. They just take debt to repay interest. And then what they've done is taken all this debt and put this mega huge conglomerate together by buying out companies, but they're called zombie companies. So if they're zombie companies, they're also zombie human beings, right? Who are running day to day to make sure the credit card payments, they have money. I mean, I have my accountant who constantly tells me, sir, मेरे पास जल्दी salary दे दो, मेरा debt for my house EMI in India is going to hit, right? And then if there's zombie people, zombie companies, why can't they be zombie countries? They were. Can you imagine Latin America is still zombie? Because of the debt crisis they had. Half of sub-Sahara Africa under the Chinese debt is zombie country. So why can't India be a zombie country? Nothing, folks, is too large to fail. And the Wall Street guy should know it, having seen Shearson Lehman, having seen Barings, having seen what happened to the Latin Americans, having seen how Iceland melted down. Right? And the reality of India, though, folks, is this. India rank in terms of per capita income is 128. That must make us humble. One day India will become the third largest economy in the world, but our goal must be to increase their per capita income and rank among the top 10 countries in the world. Okay. Here's the point. When we talk about this, that one of the gentlemen said he had to interview some insane amount of people to find 0.5% of PhDs he needed because there's no education. And this is what somebody says, right? This is Kai Pulai. He says, what's the point in GE being the toughest exam in the world? If we take 40 years to develop a jet fighter, what's the point in UPSC being so tough and pick only the best minds if we don't have basic infra and governance delivery 70 years post-independence? We can't make a jet engine yet, right? Then, what happened to India's economy? The reality, shrunk by the pandemic. Yeah, for everybody got shrunk. But look at this, right? China actually grew at 3.2%, Japan shrunk by 7.6%, US by 9.5%, Germany by 10.1%, Canada by 12%, Italy by 12.4%, France by 13.8%, UK by 20.4%, and India by 23.9%. No wonder we are the fastest growing economy because we have the lowest base, folks. Everybody forgets that, right? And this is the other problem that one has here in India, which you don't see it when you're sitting on the top and seeing the top line, which, though funnily he said South is doing really well. So do you think the southern people are not upset with the northern people who are sucking their requirement? And this is why. Indian states are short of money, they need help. Changes of the past 6 years have put their finances in a precarious position, and especially in the south. How poor the condition in India is this. Indians trek into US at record levels. That is people from Punjab and Gujarat. Don't you think this is going to have a major impact on foreign policy, especially if Trump comes in, right? And here's another one. India objects to ILO reports that claim 83% unemployed are youth. Not only are they unemployed because the employment opportunities are gone. That's why I said when you have all these people, you are so happy that you have these household help and chauffeurs. But you're actually saying to yourself, yeah, don't educate them too much because, hey, tomorrow we won't have any help, right? Right? They shouldn't have any aspiration. Their aspiration should be 5 kg anaj. But here's the story for you. The Prime Minister makes this a proud point for us in the country to say he's giving 80 crore out of the 140 crore people 5 kg Free Anaj, free Anaj. In the same breath, his guys sitting, because they've got to cover this up, are saying that only 20 crore people are below the poverty line. What's the 60 crore? This 80 crore free Anaj means these 80 crores cannot afford anything, right? So, one of these statements has to be true. Either 80 crores is genuine and 20 crores is fraud, right? Or 60 crore people are getting Anaj, and that's a huge, big scam. Then you have this. 10 Indians serving in Russian army return, right? US calls India amongst the most challenging on IPR safety. And now if we are so challenged on IPR safety, we still can't get a jet engine right. You know what's happening in the world? Yesterday in the High Court, WhatsApp got up and said it was the case because of these new deadlines that are coming up where they have to open up that encryption to the government of India on the 1st of July. Their lawyer said that we are going to walk out. We couldn't have said this before. And similar to this, add this to that. Musk defers India's visit, says aim to visit later this year. Now, both these people, Meta and Twitter, are responsible more or less for the proliferation of alternate news in India. And they actually know what's actually happening, right? And then, because that's happening, you suddenly get this by Balbir Punj, the neo-colonialism of global reports ranking. Indira Gandhi said this all the time. We are back to the same old foreign interference and neo-colonialism. Just before the 18th Lok Sabha election, several reports authored by the international agencies appeared, running down the country on various parameters. Without a doubt, most of them are agenda-driven, reeking of neo-colonialism. There is nothing called neo-colonialism. And that's why, folks, for the people who only look at top line, you got to see this. Phase 2, another dip. So 2 phases of elections have gone by, and the vote percentage has more or less crashed by 4 to 5% because people just don't want to go out to vote. Then you have this. Why foreign policy needs to be a part of poll debate? It obviously does, because what happens in India, especially how the level of discourse in India has crashed in terms of by the powers that may be and the gentleman that may be at the top, who's gone, and the 3 of them gone totally ballistically anti as they call it, people who have more children, anti, some places it's termed as Muslim. It's going to have an impact globally, right? You're beginning to see that, right? But he says why foreign policy needs to be part of poll debate. While matters of foreign policy and national security are deemed too important to be considered partisan, there are good reasons for politics not to stop at the water's edge. A nation's position in anarchic international politics and the ruling elite's perception of national interest considerations are too uncertain and dynamic variables not to be debated in a democratic setup. As a rising India engages the world with confidence in an increasingly challenging environment, informed contestations on foreign policy should be the norm. Okay. Pushing the envelope hard is written by Pranab Dhal Samta. He says conflicts are being managed to draw new lines of hostile engagement. He says Israel's strike on the Iranian consulate in Damascus, Syria was escalatory in many respects, but what stood out was Tel Aviv's risking Israeli embassy compounds globally. Elsewhere, Russia is pushing Europe hard with Ukraine question for Moscow conquest despite reversals is very much on. In East Asia, China has its own game of truth or dare going on. It has chosen to weaponize its economic clout built on a network of economic dependencies to intimidate the near neighborhood, including India. Together, these 3 zones have emerged as points of global tumult. It's therefore not surprising that Joe Biden put significant political capital in pushing through a 95 billion package through Congress last week. Of this, 60 billion is for Ukraine, about 26 billion for Israel, and humanitarian aid to Gaza, while close to 8 billion for Taiwan and the Indo-Pacific. As a result, chances of any conflict escalating beyond the current normal are quite high. India has to be clear. And like I said, how it's working on the foreign policy. And because of the debate on our minorities, you almost all but have lost Bangladesh, right? It's there because Hasina needs you to prop it, but the people are totally against this government. You've lost Nepal comically, because Nepal is also not a hardcore Hindu nation at this point, because that's why communism is there, right? It came to uproot the monarchy, which was the last Hindu king, I think. And we are trying our level best, this government is, to get that monarchy back. But bigger problem is this Muslim majority island of Maldives. As the Chinese research ship enters Maldives water. Maldives polls today to test Muizu's India policy too. India keeps an eye on President's coalition wins Maldives parliament polls. Let me tell you, before this discourse started in our election run-up, there was every chance that he wouldn't do so, but now it does. Boost for Ms. Muizu as his party gets super majority in House. On the other side, because of what's happening in Manipur, you actually lost both the sides where you could have built infrastructure. One that has been debated, the ASEAN highway, the other one that is IMEC, because there are conflicts in both places, right? Myanmar rebels battle junta soldiers at Thailand border. Male gets aggro. Muizu's majority may be challenged for New Delhi, but selling out to China won't help Maldives. Well, we can keep crying blue murder. Resistance forces now control half of Myanmar's territory. ASEAN neighbors can break Myanmar impasse, said Rajiv Bhatia. Before this coup, the Myanmar military personnel numbered, according to experts, some 370,000. 3 years of fighting with its people has depleted the military strength, firepower and morale, and we are not in sync with the people of Myanmar, unfortunately. But on the other side, folks, Ukraine drones strike Russian fuel depots, power stations. US House approves 95 billion in package for Ukraine, Israel and Taiwan. US House passes 61 billion critical aid for Ukraine. Biden signs 95 billion aid package for Ukraine, Israel and Taiwan. And here you got to realize, like I told you, strategic patience is what the US is doing as far as Ukraine is concerned now. It's 95 billion, 60 billion plus 50 billion from the European Union as aid to Ukraine will turn the tables come summer. Everybody who's thinking that Putin is have his way, and I've always said he won't, right? And just a small piece of news on the Western theater, Iran, Israel appear to pull back from the brink, but just about. And in our policy, like I said, when you have nothing, right? Like I said, capital does not like this. BJP sees a Congress communist link, so even global capital does. And secondly, Shah attacks, Nehru blunders, vows terror-free JNK by 2020. So all we've got in this discourse is either anti-Islam or attack Nehru, right? But you can't pull down such a huge global figure down, right? Where you might not like it, but pictures of him are all over the world, whether it is the United Kingdom, whether it's the President of the United States, and he is part of history, folks. Part of your history, part of my history. We just can't trash it. 3 cheers and Jai Hind. But watch our election results, folks. It's not over till the fat lady sings. It's not over till the fat lady sings.